It's good to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces, old familiar faces. Don't mean that bad, John. But John and I went to high school together, actually sang in the same group together many, many years ago. 9 years ago, right? So anyway, I am with TriLink Restoration Services, and we are in a business that when you need us, you're not having a good day. Okay? That's just one of the things that typically are going to happen there. You know, I traveled a lot. And I used to go to California and talk to those guys, and they say, "Oh, those tornadoes in Oklahoma, they're just so bad." And I'm like, "Yeah, but look at these earthquakes you have." Can't say that anymore. You know, we are getting all these earthquakes in Oklahoma. There are so many things that can affect us, even whenever it's just a really cold snap like we had back in December 20th. You know, and we had so many, and I'm sure you had so many calls that morning. Hey, we had water pipes bust. Things are floating in the living room. Things are floating in the chapel. Things are floating in the classrooms. And at that point, they are trying to decide who are they going to use to come in and mitigate the loss that they have there at their personal property or at their place of business. And those are some of the things I want to talk with you about today is the preparation for that. Any of you ever go get a loan for your business? Anybody? Show of hands. Okay. Very few businesses are going to give you a loan if you don't come in with a business plan, or as you get into other situations, coming in with a covenant of some sort that you're going to work out with them. And we do these things, and one of the things, I think Doug was the one who told me about this, people in the United States actually have plans for the zombie apocalypse. They do. They actually have plans for the zombie apocalypse. But yet, I think if I ask you, and I'm not going to do this, this is rhetorical, how many of you are planning and have sat down with your family members about a fire, a flood, a tornado? How many of you have done it with your workers that you have, that you depend on, and they depend on you to be able to get through some sort of disaster that would take place at your place of business? A few of you might have business interruption insurance. Okay, that's a great thing to have, but prior to the event, are you prepared for that taking place? Being in the restoration business, I can tell you that those people who have planned survive and weather those storms much more successfully, without a doubt. I know that if we get to a business and if they call us within 30 or 40 minutes of the time that they have had an issue, especially with water, and primarily most of the things we deal with are water related, we know that we can go in and get them restored and backing up to where they need to be very quickly. Okay, if they wait, let's say it happens on Friday evening, and all weekend that place is sat underwater, we're going to have some serious issues. You know, these walls in here are rock walls, sheetrock. Okay, if the water gets to the bottom of it, they're like a wick in a candle, and it just starts going up the wall. The sooner we can get to that, the better it's going to be. If you want to, I think most of you have one of these brochures that I handed out to you. If you open it up, one of the things that we're really fortunate to have in that picture on the inside cover, we have a little 600 square foot house that we built in our business. This is a flood house. And we have pretty much any kind of surface that you could have at your business or at your residence in that flood house. And we've flooded this thing 70, 80 times in the past 3 or 4 years. Still has the same sheetrock. Because as soon as we flood it, we also go in and extract all the water and dry it. You know, there's the levels of, is it dry, is it drying, or is it wet? And those are the 3 places we look at. And this little house, you could actually go live there. I thought about it a couple of times, but it has been flooded 70 to 80 times in the past 2 or 3 years. And we have replaced, but the thing we've done is we've painted it once. We painted it once. That shows me that if we're prepared for something like this taking place, then we're able to get back on our feet much, much sooner. You know, Benjamin Franklin said, people who are failing to plan are planning to fail. And that can't be overstated whenever we start talking about our homes or our workplaces. Because there are so many of us that have people that work with us, and some of you may have 2 or 3 employees, some of you maybe you are the primary employee, others may have 30, 40, 50 employees. And if we can get into that position of being able to get restored and back into a place of being back in our offices, in our places of work sooner, then we have helped mitigate the loss that is going to take place with everyone who works there. Going back then, even more importantly, if you take care of those things at your house. Most fires don't take place during the day. Most fires take place at night. And a lot of the structures in Oklahoma are two-story houses. Let's just say that one of your kids is shut off from one part of the house and they have to escape through a window. And in emergency situations, they cordon off areas and people can't come in and can't leave. Where is that child going to go if they don't know what to do at that point because they can't get to you? And so there are a lot of plans that we can make for things that come up, and we'll talk about those more whenever we get into the Q&A here in a few minutes. But I want to stress to you that the best opportunity for surviving any kind of disaster or any kind of catastrophe is pre-planning and preparation. Thank you.
I got to set up my shameless self-promotion here. So I don't have any handouts today. So my message ultimately is very simple, but I won't give it away before we get to it. Do you guys remember, I guess it was 6 or 7 years ago now, probably longer, and I just don't want to admit it. There was that tornado that kind of went through Bethany, like hit Wiley Post Air Park, and then bounced over my house. I could hear it. It went over my house, and then it landed at Hefner and destroyed all those millionaires' boats. I felt so bad for them. We did data recovery on some of the computers in those businesses that were affected. Cleaning mud and muck out of a computer because the customer, the people who just were volunteering to help, didn't have any copies. So we're going to start with, I like to do what's called a risk analysis and determine how large your surface area of exposure is. A lot of times you guys see me doing the IT Oklahoma and the camera and the video. My secret identity is as a CIO with 20 years of experience in information technology. So do you use an accounting package that's on site? QuickBooks, Peachtree? Anybody raise your hand? Okay. Do you use Microsoft Word, Excel, anything where you write letters to your customers, you keep track of inventory, any of that? Okay. Do you have pictures that are important for your work and what you do? Leave your hands up if you said yes to any of this. Okay. Do you have more than one computer with that information on it? Okay, good. Do you have backups of everything? Raise your hands. How many of you have restored from those backups to make sure that they're good? Him and you. Those are the only two people that have backups. The rest of you have a theory. You presume that stuff is doing its job. I've been able to raise children and build a business around the fact that computers don't work right all the time. So if you do have a backup in place, I want you to call your IT guy, or maybe that's you, and I want you to restore your backup. I want you to go in and look at it and see what happens and see if it's actually even there. Because I remember, I've been doing this long enough where we restored from tape. And, we'd get called in because, somebody's been replacing the tape, the same tape. These are like cassettes, guys, for like 5 years. Server died. We need to restore it. There's nothing on there. Nobody ever tried to do a restore. Backups are more important today than ever. Computers are more reliable today than ever. So, what? Okay, you've all heard the horror stories about a hospital in California is held hostage by the CryptoLocker virus, right? Yeah. You may have heard that a large construction or a concrete company whose trucks are green in Oklahoma City was affected by that. Not my client. I'll say that. There is one thing that will save you if your stuff has been encrypted in a CryptoLocker environment. Your backups. not paying them. Since January, I've had 5 clients whose entire networks, regardless of how good I am at security, it still happened. They have been completely locked down. Their server shares, because it was a C-level, somebody important who had access to almost everything. By the time that we were made aware of it, by the time we saw the activity, everything was locked down. Everything was encrypted. Out of those 5 customers, all of them multi-million-dollar customers, none of them were down for more than 7 business hours as we restored everything from multiple different backups. It never made the news because we were prepared beforehand. There is dick all I can do, Jill's not here so I can talk like me, about your data if it's already been encrypted. The last person that was affected, it was a group of amateurs working out of France. Everybody know kind of what an algorithm is and how this encryption stuff works, and you give them the Bitcoin stuff and they send you the key and it unlocks it all? Well, this particular variant, these guys aren't professional criminals, they're amateurs. Their encryption was flawed. Even if they had been paid in the Bitcoin, there's no way the customer's data could have been decrypted. It was bad software code that encrypted their information. So it was gone forever. There is no trick. There's nothing for it. Maybe someday, quantum computing, et cetera, et cetera. But for right now, for today, for the real world, the only thing that matters is if you have a backup. Whether it's CryptoLocker, whether it's your computer dies, I can't stress to you how important a backup is. If I have a backup, everything else is solvable. The only unforgivable sin, the thing I tell all of my engineers, what's the one unforgivable sin? And the answer is data loss. We won't get into blasphemy of the Holy Spirit and all that, but it's data loss. If they rely on us and we say, yes, you have backups, it's on us. It's on you to make sure you have backups of everything that's important. A good way to determine if something is important or not for your daily business is to try not using it for an hour. Don't open your accounting package. Don't open your address book. Don't open your CRM package. Don't open whatever that thing is. And determine if you can still operate your business. And whatever you can't live without for a minute, you spend whatever you need to make sure it gets backed up. Put off buying a faster computer to make sure that all the data on this one is actually backed up. So that's my And I'm going to let Jim Marshall with the State Insurance Commissioner's Office talk to you today about maybe how you can handle some of the things Craig and I have thrown at you.
Great, thank you. If you'd be so kind as to start the video, I appreciate it. My name is Jim Marshall, the Oklahoma Insurance Department, and I would like to address what this video is going to show. In Oklahoma, it's mentioned that we have a number of tornadoes. The house on the left is built to Oklahoma current standards today in our code. The house on the right is built to what they refer to as fortified home standards. The difference is the house on the left did not survive 135 mile per hour wind. The house on the right did. The cost on the house that stands withstood the test cost approximately 2% more in new construction cost. That 2% is found in wherever there's a wood-to-wood connection, there's also a brace, a clamp, a hurricane tie that holds the structure together in addition to the nails. It's also anchored to the foundation through a J-bolt. And the bolt, as the exterior wall is applied, there's a metal plate that's attached and bolted down on top of the structure. That the roof itself is tied directly to the exterior walls with metal clamps.
Is this an actual video?
Yes, it is. This is filmed by the Institute for Business and Home Safety. They have it's a nonprofit think tank design that's created to look at construction science to offer best practices to mitigate the effects of, in this case, high winds. And so they're based in South Carolina as far as the wind, this wind structure, the wind tunnel. The institute itself is out of Tampa, Florida. In Oklahoma, we will and continue to have tornadic activity. We're not the most frequent state that's visited by tornadoes in the United States. Florida holds that distinction. However, Florida, their level of tornadic activity is generally an F1 or less. Whereas in Oklahoma, we will experience a little less than 100 tornadoes on average, and we will experience approximately 85% of them will be an F2 or less. The home on the right, the one that stands continuously, and as this circles back, is built to the F2 standard. Now, when you talk about building code, you're talking about the minimum that is in the law for safety, not the maximum, just what the minimum standards will be. And the minimum standards we have here in Oklahoma are approximately for a 95-mile-per-hour wind. If we look at the city of Moore and the F5 tornado they experienced in 2013, approximately 85% of that tornado was an F2 or less. Although it was, on the ground for 17 miles, 85% of the damage that tornado caused, if those homes had been built to the fortified standards, would have survived. Matter of fact, when you look at a tornado, they take the highest velocity of wind that's measured through scientific efforts, as well as looking at the path of destruction. And whatever the highest velocity is, that is the designation for that tornado. In the Moore tornado, less than 1%, 0.5% actually, caused the rating of the F5. In other words, less than 0.5% exceeded the 200 mile per hour wind, which then results in F5. In the state of Alabama, they have, they're ahead of the nation as far as fortified home structures. The legislature there, because of hurricanes and the impact of hurricanes on the coastal counties, they have incentivized the construction of fortified homes. They have completed over 1,000 homes of new construction in those 3 counties that were designated by the state legislature. Of those 3 counties, of the 1,000 homes, an institute out of the University of Alabama went to those 3 counties and conducted an assessment to see what is the resale value of a fortified home, fortified to what they call the gold standard, versus those homes that were constructed that are not fortified. And this is important because you have a choice. You can build a fortified home. You don't have to, but if you do, there's a slight economic incentive by the legislature. And more importantly, you have a home that's constructed to withstand hurricane with winds up to 135 miles per hour. What they found in their research when they looked at comps, the fortified home versus non-fortified home, they found that there's a 6.7% increase in value of the fortified home over the non-fortified home in those counties. So you're looking at a 2% upfront cost to build the fortified home with the bracing. There's also what they refer to as a hurricane garage door that's included, and that's the largest door of any home. And when that door is compromised, catastrophic outcomes are expected. And the reason why is pretty simple. When you have the hurricane, or the tornado in our case, you have the winds coming from one particular direction, and we'll say that it's at least 135 miles per hour. Well, when the garage door is compromised, it's the equivalent of taking and overinflating a balloon, except that that's not a balloon, it's a structure, it's your home. When that overinflation, overpressurization takes place, that force is going to result in some form of activity inside the home. It's going to cause that structure to give way in some fashion. Couple that with a unique phenomena. It's the same phenomena that creates lift on an airfoil or on a wing. When the air goes over the wing or over the house, the velocity of the wind increases as it goes over, but as the velocity increases, the pressure decreases. So you have two types of pressure that a structure will experience when the garage door is compromised. You have an inflation pressure in the structure, and then you have a decrease of pressure on the back side of the house due to the Venturi effect, or decrease in pressure. So what happens is the back part of your roof blows out. And that's a phenomenon when you look at aerial photographs of where a tornado's gone through. You'll see chunks of a roof that is missing. Well, in large measure, that's because of failure of the garage door. The recognition of tornadic activity, and particularly more, was studied by a group of scholars, mostly out of, or a large number of them out of OU and other institutions that came to Oklahoma under a National Science Foundation award. And their conclusion was presented after they did a ground study. They looked at the path, they analyzed the damage. They presented it to Moore, the city of Moore. And their conclusions are very similar to what the IBHS Fortified Home construction standards are. Hurricane garage door, metal connectors, anchor it to the ground, and there's some other minor changes, but that will preserve most of Oklahoma's housing stock 85% of the time. Thank you.